we just had a banger of a live stream, and a lot of the stuff in there was very unexpected to me. And so it's making me second guess a lot of my future plans. But I want to start with this developer radio because I think this is the thing that's going to impact me the most. And it's because I do a lot of showcases, and so relics are quite important to me. And this is going to make getting relics a lot different. I'm going to explain why in a bit. So they're introducing a new item called wishful resin. And it's kind of like the condensed resin we had. So condensed resin, if you don't know, is an item that can let you craft artifacts with a main stat that you choose. So let's say you wanted a crit damage body piece, you can use your condensed resin to force a crit damage body piece to drop. The problem was you could never control the substats, so 9 times out of 10, whatever you crafted with the condensed resin was unusable anyways. So this is going to change that, because now if you use the blue thing, the wishful resin, in conjunction with the condensed resin, you can now choose a substat, a main stat and a substat, and that's pretty game changing. And also, if you were to spend 4 of the blue things, you could choose two substats, but I don't think this is as valuable. I think you should rarely ever touch the 1+4. Most of the time, you should probably stick with 1+1, and I'm gonna go into why, because there's a lot of scenarios where 1+1 is actually very valuable. And there's one more item that they introduced, and that's called the variable die. So what this does is it lets you reroll a completely upgraded relic. So let's say you had a relic piece that had double crit lines, but it kept rolling into defense. You can now, instead of trashing that piece because it's completely useless, you can now use this variable die on it and hope you can reroll from the defense onto your crit. It's kind of like you reset the artifact and you level it up to 15 again. And this is really good because sometimes it's like really hard to get a quantum orb with double crit, only for you to level it up and it all goes into defense. Now you can keep that piece and just keep rerolling it until it lands into double crit. That's a pretty big deal. As for how we obtain these items, so the wishful resin, this blue thing here, can be gained from the battle pass, and you can also craft 2 of them, I guess, per patch by consuming 800 of the relic remains. So that means you have to like trash 80 5-star pieces to get one of these. You could also exchange a self-modeling resin into one of these. So if you have excess self-modeling resin, you could also exchange them into the blue stuff. But you can only do that 3 times a month. And then for the variable die, you can exchange self-modeling into it at a rate of 3-to-1 instead of 1-to-1. All of this is really, really cool in my opinion. This variable die is definitely going to be useful because I have a lot of plus 15 relics that rolled into the wrong stats, and this is going to let me reroll them. But I want to talk mostly about this because over here you have a decision to make where it's a 1+1 or 1+4. And I kind of want to explain my thought process on why I think 1+1 is almost always the play, and you should almost never touch 1+4 unless you're a dedicated main to a specific character and just never got the right orb. So let me pull up paint. Alright, I have paint pulled up now, and you're gonna have to stick with me here because my drawing skills aren't the best. So when you're crafting relics, there are a few options you can do. You can just raw dog it with your 100 relic remains with no condensed resin whatsoever. And there's 2 scenarios where that's actually fine to do, and that's when you're trying to craft your headpieces and your hands. So this is supposed to be a glove, 2 gloves. All right, so your headpieces and your hands, because they always have the same main stats. It's HP for the headpieces and it's attack for the hands. So for these pieces, you can't actually use condensed resin on them because you're always going to get these main stats, right? And all you're doing is you're praying for the right substats each time you craft one of these. So these are the situations where you don't need to use any condensed resin or any wishful resin. If you want to just raw dog it, just craft your HP and your attack pieces. If you want to use self-modeling resin, there's usually 3 different scenarios where you want to actually use it. One of them is, this is a shirt, so a crit damage body, or speed boots for your support. And then the last scenario is usually energy regen on your rope. So these are the 3 different main stats that you're usually hunting for: crit damage on your body, speed on your boots, and energy regen on the rope. In each of these scenarios, you actually only need 1 substat. So if you're a DPS character, then you want crit rate. And that's pretty much like the only one that you actually need. If you're a support character, the only one you need is speed. So it's your choice whether you want to use your 1+1 on crit rate or speed, right? This is for DPS, and then this is for your support. For the speed boot, this is going on your support, so the only thing you really care about here is crit damage. And then for the ER rope, this is usually going on your support as well, and the only thing you really need is speed. And so these are the scenarios where I think your 1+1 is actually very useful, right? If you want a crit damage body for your main carry, then all you need to do is look for crit rate as the substat. If you're looking for a support-centered crit damage piece, then you just want speed for the substat. And then if you're looking for a speed boot for your support, all you really need to do is specify a crit damage roll. And then if you're looking for an energy regen piece, then all you need to specify is a speed roll. So this is kind of like the situation where I think majority of the players, 90% of the time when you're going to be using this item, it's probably going to be one of these cases. But there are 10% scenarios where you might actually want the 1+4. And so I'm going to go into those. So when would you need the 1+4? These are scenarios that have to be very rare because this is so expensive. With the 1+4, you could have gotten 4 of these. So for the same price as a single 1+4, you could have gotten instead a crit damage piece for your DPS with crit rate substat, a crit damage piece for your support with speed substat, a speed boot for your support with crit damage substat, and an ER rope for your support with speed substat, because both scenarios cost you 4 of the blue thingies. I don't know what they are. 4 of those wishful resin could have gotten you all of these, or it could get you 1 of a dedicated piece. So it's your choice. I think this is much more worth it than this. So I'm going to show you some of the scenarios in which you actually want to use the 1+4. And usually it's when you have specific boots you want. So like, let's say an attack boot where you want crit damage and crit rate. Or this attack can also be speed. It could also be defense, if it's defense scaling, or it can be HP, if it's an HP scaling character. You kind of get what I mean. It's like a dedicated boot with crit damage, crit rate. I just don't think that this is worth 4 of these. And then the other scenario is your orb, right? Your orb, you can go for a damage percent. So depending on what character you have, it could differ. And the double crit. This is probably where most people will be using this if they do choose to use the 1+4. Most of the time, it's going to be in this situation here. I also don't think this is the most important because I just don't think it's worth the 1+4. I don't think this is worth it because personally, I think it's just good enough to do a damage percent here and then just choose one of either crit damage or crit rate depending on what you're lacking. And then you just roll with this piece until you happen upon a better one. I just don't think that this here is worth 4 when you can get 4 of these each for just 1 cost. So that's my take on the relic system with my beautiful artwork. I'll probably have more developed thoughts after this thing actually comes out and we know a bit more about it. And I'm coming at this from the angle that these aren't super common, and so each use of these has to be very thoughtful. And so I just don't think it's worth spending on something like this, where you have to spend so much when you can easily spend it on something like an energy rope with a speed subset. Because this is really hard to get. If you've ever tried farming this, you know how hard it is to get something like this.